All right, let's go ahead and start. Thanks for joining, whoever was able to today. I'm Jessica Herman, and Miss Kari Wilcox is with me. We are going to present on conscious discipline today. So if you watch our video, please comment your first and last name over in here or wherever you may be watching this on YouTube or Facebook. Just comment so that we know that you watched it, and if you're interested in getting more information. We do want to let you know that you need either a pen and paper or a Google document. We're going to have you write down some things and respond. Just a couple little notes. And if you don't have that with you, that's totally fine too. We can make it work. And then Kari and I are both going to tell you how we use conscious discipline in our own lives. So I have a 3-year-old. So outside of being a parent educator, I use conscious discipline every single day to get out the door in the morning, to labeling emotions with her, offering choices, being a safekeeper, and modeling deep breaths. So we are doing that all day, every day, pretty much.
And I don't have a 3-year-old anymore. I have teenagers and young adults in my house, and I can use conscious discipline. We started using it when they were kids, and it still works, even with teenagers and down. So for example, when I see my teenager getting upset, I can say, "Ooh, do you want to take a deep breath? Like, that looks like you're really struggling with that decision." And it's still, because we laid that foundation when they were younger, we can still get that, shift from that emotional state back to like, okay, we can think about this now. So that's how I still use it in my daily life.
Perfect. So yeah, we just want to reiterate that it can be used across all age groups. The website is also a really great resource, just consciousdiscipline.com. Okay, and here is an overview of our presentation. So all the things we're going to do today, we're going to define conscious discipline. We're going to go over the brain state model and how that's related to conscious discipline. And then we're going to cover just 2 of the 7 powers of conscious adults today, and more will be gone over at a later date. So we'll close with either questions in the comments or with some frequently asked questions on the Conscious Discipline website. So diving right in. What is conscious discipline? Conscious discipline is an evidence-based, trauma-informed approach used in the classroom, and we're here to try to help you transform that into the home. It's used in over 90 countries, and the Harvard's study authors say conscious discipline provides an array of behavior management strategies and classroom structures that teachers can use to turn everyday situations into learning opportunities. So their core methodology based on 4 essential components that are scientifically and practically designed for success. So this is really more about helping children to be successful rather than getting them to behave. So first and foremost, conscious discipline disrupts the cycle by empowering adults to change their behavior and connect with themselves first. So in any time of a moment of upset with your kiddo, whether it's a tantrum or a fight or sibling related or not, you should discipline yourself first and your child second. So you discipline yourself by taking at least 3 big deep breaths before you respond or speak. It took me a little while to get used to doing that. I definitely don't take that much time before responding to my child, at least before I learned about conscious discipline. And then you will introduce logical consequences to them, and it will be more effective at that point. So taking those deep breaths in front of our kiddos is super important. And after that, we use empathy and reflection to help the kiddo to become more aware of his or herself. So we want to establish body awareness, how they look, what their face looks like, what their body's doing, and then really build that empathy. So you were really, really wanting this cookie from the store or whatever it was, and letting them know that you get it, that you understand, and you're still on their team. So children must feel safe, connected, and have the skills in order to understand consequences. So Ms. Kari, tell us a little bit more about those brain state models.
Right. And Jess was just touching on how kids feel. And sometimes when our kids misbehave, we really do take it personally. That child who's throwing their dinner off the high chair repeatedly, we look at that and we think, why are they doing that? What are they doing? And so when we understand and look at our kids' behavior as less of act against us, but more of a, hey, what happens if I do this? And how do I learn a different trait? If I don't want to see this happening, how do I teach them something different? And so what we know with our kiddos and their brains is that they're developing, and at a very fast pace, especially birth to 5. And as a mom of teenagers, I can tell you they're still developing past that. But at birth to 5, it's a rapid rate of development. And so when we look at the brain, we understand that kids live like in the emotional part of their brain. And I love to display the brain as a hand, and your survival state is the palm, and your emotional state is your little thumb. And then the good rational thinking is that, frontal lobe right there. But most of our kids, they're living a lot in their, limbic system, or their emotional state. And so when they're in that, the behavior looks like whining and crying and nagging and, doing that. And so we want, with conscious discipline, to know, how do we downshift our kids to where they're in that thinking state? And so the brain state model really shows us that kids can be shifted from one state to the next. So when they're in that fight or flight mode, they're in that brainstem, and you see hitting and kicking. By teaching them, when they're happier in a previous time, how to take a deep breath, how to disconnect from that survival state by doing an I love you ritual, or by knowing how I know how to take a deep cleansing breath, and I see my mom doing it, just like Jess was talking, before we deal with behavior, we deal with our own emotion. And so when we model that behavior to our child and say, wow, you look so upset, your face looks like this, and you're doing this, and we take that deep breath, we're showing them, how am I calming down? But at the same time, we're receiving the benefit as a parent of calming our own emotion down, so that we can then deal with that behavior and get their brains into that thinking mode, because the brain functions as a whole all the time, but we have to know which little part of their brain is functioning the most at the time. So when we look at their behavior, we see hitting and kicking, and instead of thinking they're trying to hurt someone, they're trying to be mean to their friend, we see, oh, they're in that survival state. I got to get them, we got to shift. We got to somehow get them down. And so one of the things we're going to talk about today is also those 7 powers of a conscious adult. And that is, the first power that we want to talk about is perception. So when we see behavior, what are we seeing? How do we perceive that behavior? The example of a child who's hitting or kicking at you because they don't want to take a bath, or in their hitting, they're in survival state. If we perceive that as, ooh, they're really out of control and they look like they need some help, rather than they're trying to hurt me, or they're trying to fill in the blank with whatever we feel, by engaging with our kids in that way, we offer them a solution to that behavior and teach them how to handle those big upsets. And so that's the brain state kind of in a nutshell. I think Jess is going to go back.
Oh, you're good. So yeah, all behavior is a form of communication in conscious discipline. So they give us the skills to shift our intention to help children be successful by kind of changing attention seeking to connection seeking. Instead of, they just really want attention right now. No, they want to connect with you. They want to see you, feel seen, and feel heard, and safe and loved, just because, as we mentioned just before. So instead of seeing a behavior as a sign that a child is inherently bad, you'll learn to see behavior as a sign that the child is missing a skill. So our next little section is going to be all about the power of perception. Attention seeking is going to go out the window. We're going to only think about connection seeking. So we're also going to change the way that we praise our kiddos and the words that we give them when we do praise them. So attaching a good and a bad to all of the things that our kiddos do, we want to try to let go of that and be more of a narrator rather than a judger. So shifting from good job to you did it, and teaching them more about that personal, that intrinsic motivation as well, so they understand what's going on whenever we do that. So I want you to get out your journal or your paper or another tab here on your Google Documents, or you can just really close your eyes and think about this. But I want you to think about the last time that your child threw a tantrum. What did you say and do in response to that tantrum? So I'll give you just a second, and then I'm going to give you my own example of my life and something things that have also been listed on Conscious Discipline. We're actually going to go back a little bit in time, about 6 months ago, at a time when I didn't use Conscious Discipline, when I probably should have. Dinner time is a big stressor in our family for my 3-year-old. So she was throwing a tantrum, crying and screaming really loudly because she didn't want to go to the dinner table. And that was a really, really good time for me to notice that that's a trigger for me. Screaming, crying, and whining, especially for long periods of time, really, really builds up my frustration until I either finally yell or take a break. And that's usually when I literally say I need to take a time out and go take some deep breaths, or right in front of my kiddo, I'm feeling a little bit frustrated because you're having a lot of feelings right now. And doing that right in front of her. So noticing triggers is another really big part of perception and understanding what's upsetting us. So being a narrator rather than a judger. And your tantrum, the last time that your kiddo threw a tantrum, what did you say and do in response? Just touching on that a little bit. Number one, forgive yourself if you didn't do it the right way, because no one is able to do it the right way all of the time. And do we really know if it's the right way every single time? I'm not sure. But forgive yourself for that. You are a good parent, and everybody is trying. Obviously, if you're watching this, you're trying really hard to do the best that you can, especially in times of turmoil and COVID. So next time, what we want to try to do when our kiddo is upset is, one, take that big deep breath right in front of them, talking about our feelings or their feelings, just kind of depending on what's going on, and then responding with empathy and choices. So when you do that, you are teaching your child that it is possible to remain calm during moments of upset, or that it's possible to take a break and return to your activity or whatever it is that you're responding in. Your kids are also able to mirror the feelings that are in front of them. So by showing them what calm looks like, they're able to understand what calm looks like too. So next is, what do you think your triggers are? You can write those down. You can think about that for just a minute. Like, when was the last time you really can remember that you either lost your cool or yelled or needed to take a break? And think about what those triggers are and write down how you should respond. We're going to use the same kind of ideas that we use with kids with our adults. We're going to go over those necessary steps that we want to see, those positive steps that we take to making those connections with our kids. So next piece here, kids saying no to their parents. That can be a major, major trigger for a lot of people. So I just wanted to touch on it really quickly. Our kids' voices are really important. They need to know that they're seen and heard. So when they say no to you, we should really at least consider the idea of letting them, especially for preschool age kiddos or kiddos that have just learned to speak. They have learned that they can say no, which also means I don't like it, or I don't want to do that, or any sentence that they're not able to quite project yet. And we need to respect that to a certain extent, but that's hard for us because generationally saying no to your parents is disrespectful. And when you're a teenager, that's a lot different from saying no as a child, but their voice is very important. They should be able to say no when they don't want to play someone or with someone, or no if they don't want to eat that food. And it's not any kind of reflection on you as a parent or how they feel about you. Again, changing that perception. If they were able to say, I really don't want to do this, Mom, would you feel differently? Would you be able to respond or change it just a little bit? So just try to be a little bit more mindful, especially when kiddos say no, about being empathetic with what they do want at that moment when they're telling you no. Like, I understand you really don't want to leave the park right now, but you can walk or I can carry you, and offer those two choices. At that point, if they still say no, then I become the safekeeper. I have to carry you to the car to keep you safe because it's time to go. So that is everything that I have on the power of perception and triggers and things being taken away. So the next thing we're going to talk about is consequences. So there are 3 types of consequences: natural, logical, and problem solving. So natural is fairly easy to explain and understand. It happens naturally. So when you if you touch a hot stove and it hurts, or you go outside in the cold without your coat and then you feel cold. The kiddos should be able to feel this on their own with no interaction from you. We should allow the child to feel those feelings associated with their choice and then go over what they should have done or what we would have expected them to have done in the first place. So definitely help that child reflect and learn new strategies rather than focusing on what they shouldn't have done. And then we're going to talk a little bit about tattling and natural consequences too, because tattling is a really big common thing. I would argue in the classroom and at home. But so intrusion tattling is when a kiddo is bothered. So Tommy keeps calling me silly face whenever she comes up to you to tattle. Tommy's calling me silly face. I really don't like it. And mom says, "Did you like it?" And she says, "Well, no." And so mom should say, "Well, then tell him my name is Chloe. Please call me Chloe." Goodness. So we're giving her the tools to set her up for success. Tell her how exactly she should respond to the other kiddo, whether it be a sibling or in a classroom, and the right way or the proper way to go forward. So that would be intrusion tattling. And we want to ask, did you like it? But revenge tattling is really more trying to get someone else in trouble. Like, Tony isn't cleaning up. Teacher, Tony is not cleaning up. Then we want to ask, are you telling me that because it's helpful or hurtful? And the answer to that is hurtful, because we wanted to get Tony in trouble for not cleaning up. So instead of being hurtful, we want to be helpful. We should go help Tony, or we should go remind Tony, this is where these blocks go, and move forward that way. Again, telling our kiddos what we want to see rather than what we don't want to see. So those are all natural consequences, kind of tying that all together. Logical consequences are prearranged by adults, and they motivate children to use the skills that they already have. So they should have like a cause and effect relationship to the kiddo's behavior. Like if they're running with scissors, they don't get to use scissors because they're not being safe with those. But the point is to teach rather than punish, and always, always, always offer that empathy. So third type of consequences is problem solving. And these are only for kiddos that are up here in our prefrontal cortex, not in the survival state, not in our emotional state, definitely up here in the executive. They're calm and collected. So if two children both want the same toy and you realize there's about to be a problem, you would say, both of you want the same toy and we only have one monster truck. How can we solve this problem? That's a really big, complex question that we'd want to work through with them step by step, most definitely, but not all kids are ready for that. You'd really have to gauge like how old your kiddo is and how their communication skills and what they're ready for and things like that too, before you'd be able to move forward and really implement more consequences that make sense to them. So that is going to lead us into connections, Miss Kari.
Thank you. That's such good information. I love all the, talking about different strategies for different scenarios, because I know a lot of parents struggle with specific behaviors, especially like tattling and being upset. And we talked about the power of perception and how we perceive our kids' behavior and how that impacts the way we respond to it. And I love that we talk about triggers. And one of the hardest things for conscious discipline, I will never forget sitting in my first training and having this moment of, oh my gosh, this is about me. This is about how I'm responding to my child's behavior so much more than it is about my child's behavior. And when we start realizing how I perceive behavior and how I empathize with my child, I really believe the more I get into conscious discipline and the more I study like the 7 powers of conscious adults, the more I believe if everybody in the world could study this, we'd be in a much happier place, because not only the power of perception, we're going to talk about just 2 tonight, the power of perception, which Jess already covered. And now I'm going to talk about the power of unity, and which leads into connection. But those 7 powers we're going to continue sharing through the year, and each video that we do and each meeting we do will cover the next section. But the power of unity, the big idea is that we're all in this together. So we can apply that globally, of course, to our adult relationships and to our relationships with our friends and our spouse. But when we apply it to our children, we perceive their behavior with compassion. So when a child is throwing a big tantrum at Target because, they put all those wonderful toys right there in the checkout and all the candy, and that's like the biggest no aisle, because, kids want everything. Nope, you can't have it. No, you can't have it. And they throw a big fit. And we can look at that and we can think, I tell them no every time. Why would they keep asking for that? Or we can look at that with, gosh, that's so hard to see something that you want so bad and just want mom or dad to say yes so bad. So we choose to see compassion. That doesn't mean we buy it for them or we give it to them, but it would look something like, oh, wouldn't that be great to buy that ring pop? I know they're so delicious. I know how much you love them, but we're going to wait and buy that ring pop next time we go, or after you've saved, if you have whatever goal you have set. So we're compassionate towards our child in that behavior, even though in the scheme of life, getting that ring pop isn't the biggest deal, but for that 2, 3, 4-year-old, it is a huge deal. And so we can show our children that compassion, like, I get it. That's really tough. It's hard to walk through this aisle. I love M&Ms. I would love to buy those M&Ms, but oh, look, they're not on our list. We can't buy them today. What's something else? Look in the cart. Maybe there's something else we're happy about getting that day. But really looking at that powerful connection that we can have with our kids and what that would mean to them with that little problem they're having. In their world, it's a huge problem, but we know it's a little, in the scheme of life, a little thing. And what foundation we're laying there with that relationship with our child for future interactions. And I like to bring this up during this Power of Unity because, as I've mentioned, I have older children. And when we lay that foundation that I get it, I'm compassionate, I understand even though I'm not going to give in to what you want, I still can empathize with you and offer you that compassion. Fast forward to the teenage years. There's going to be bigger problems that, you may tilt your world on it, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're dealing with this. But when we've already laid that foundation with our kids, that when you come to me with a big problem, I'm going to respond with compassion and calmness, then they do come to us with those big problems in the later years. The problems that could be, bigger than a ring pop, so to speak. And if you have any teenagers, some of you might know some of those problems I'm talking about, but I'm not going to scare those of you who don't have teenagers yet. But the power of perception and the power of unity is what we're talking about tonight, and perceiving our kids' behavior in that, empathetic way and being compassionate about what they're struggling with, even if it does seem like a little thing. But both of those lead into connection. And how do we form connections with our kids? And how do we lay that foundation to where they do trust and come to us and feel that we are their safekeeper? We are the person that will help them handle these big upsets, whether it be a ring pop or Billy's not inviting me to his birthday party or my sister just stole my Barbie. Whatever problem it is, and on up as they go, our kids are connected to us to know that we will help them handle these problems and teach them skills to handle those problems. And so the biggest piece of conscious discipline that I just love is that it's all about relationships and the relationship we have with our children. And with our spouse or our partner or our caretaker or our mother-in-law who's also helping raise our kids, whoever it is, that relationship is such a foundation for behavior. Relationships wire the brain for impulse control. Connections build attunement, which builds attachment. And there is such a simple and easy way to start laying that foundation. And it's something simple. It's called an I love you ritual. And what that is it's a very brief but powerful thing that we do with our kids. It has 4 components. It has eye contact, touch, your presence, which is probably the most important one, and playfulness. And when I say presence, I mean that we're right there face to face with our kiddo, or we're not thinking, ooh, I need to go turn off the stove, or ooh, I need to answer that email. We're right there, we're tuned in. Because our kids get it. Like if we're not tuned in, they understand. So when you do an I love you ritual, what it does, just the physical touch, the eye contact, the attunement that we have in being playful, which is a really big one, builds in our kids' brain all of those good hormones, like chemicals like dopamine and oxytocin and endorphins. And it creates this just feeling of happiness and safety. And so when they're upset, when they're out of that happy phase and they're in that limbic mode or the emotional state, or they're in that survival state, and we start saying, oh, round and round the garden, suddenly they're like, wait, something is happening. I'm going to shift, wait, this is a happy time. So those good chemicals flood the brain, overtake the stressful chemicals that have come in during that time of upset, and help them downshift into that better state where we can start talking to them about what's going on. And Jess has some great, I think, a good example of her doing an I love you ritual. My 15-year-old, for some reason, wouldn't let me record him and I doing an I love you ritual. So Jess is going to take over and show her with her little 3-year-old.
How rude. How rude.
Just, yeah.
Hold on. All right. Make sure you can hear it for me, Miss Kari.
I can hear you so far.
All right. Hi, I'm Jessica Herman. I'm a parent educator for the Lee Summit School District. This is my daughter, Lila, and we're going to show you some I love you rituals that we do together. Okay, ready? Twinkle, twinkle. Ready? Can you sing with me? Twinkle, twinkle, little star, what a wonderful girl you are. With blue eyes and nice round cheeks, a talented person from head to feet. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, what a wonderful girl you are.
We didn't do about.
I know, we do that sometimes too. How about this one? How about one big hug and one big twirl? You always be my special girl. That's right. Let's do it 2 times. 2 big hugs. Okay, what? You want to be done with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start with that. We may or may not have practiced a couple times before, so we didn't really want to keep playing.
That's great.
But one big hug and one big twirl, you'll always be my special girl, was just something quick and easy that came together for us one day. And I really like it because it's so short. One big hug, one big twirl. And sometimes she'll let us count and do 2 or 3 and incorporate all that other good stuff. But it's just eye contact, be present, playfulness, and the physical touch. It's so easy. Just those 4 things together.
And it's something that you can do throughout the day. Think about like when they first wake up and during a diaper change or getting dressed for the day, eating breakfast. And the important part is that we do these during happy times. And we don't start, implementing an I love you ritual during a moment of upset. We start them in a playful and happy time. And that way, when they are upset, even if you started saying, one big hug, like instantly she's going to be like, oh, wait a minute, suddenly I feel a little bit better. Research has shown I love you rituals are powerful. They are effective. They do work. It's not just, a fun little game we play with our kids, even though it is. It's also laying that foundation for that relationship for our kids to know. The other benefit that I love you rituals has that is kind of a side benefit is it works for us too. So the same thing is happening in our brain and our bodies. We're getting those good hormones flooding our brain. And so when we do that with our kids, we're also reaping the benefits of that physical touch and that connection and that attunement and that playfulness, which right now we need more and more of. I mean, everyone's feeling disconnected and out of touch with everyone. And so by doing these I love you rituals, we're also improving our own brain state, really. And that's what I have for you guys tonight as far as I love you rituals. And Jess, do you have anything else to add or?
Nope.
Nope. If you guys want to comment, if you would like a copy of some I love you rituals, or if you would like the 7 Powers of Conscious Adults, we have a great website, Conscious Discipline. It has a great website with lots of resources on it. Dive into that. They have free resources, free printables. But if you have any trouble finding it, be sure and reach out to either your parent educator or to Jess or I. We'd be happy to email you that information.
Yeah, definitely. There are some common questions on this discipline tips page. Do you want to go through 1 or 2 of those? One I actually would like to touch on is pain. because pain, there's kind of a teeter-totter, and are they really hurt? Like, how do I kind of deal with that? Or do we kind of dive into it or really empathize with that? But okay, so painful experiences are stressful for our mind and for our body, and kids take everything a little bit more stressfully than we do. So to help release those endorphins, touch is really, really important. So deep touch, like we get during a massage, releases hormones that combat the stress chemicals in our bodies. So one way to touch your child through play would be a great time whenever they're hurt, is to do an I love you ritual. Those something about boo-boos, you could make one up about that, but physically touching or getting a hug, or that kiss for a boo-boo is magical and powerful. Like, they come to you and they say they need a kiss, so usually you're getting that eye contact, you're giving a little bit of playfulness to help them feel better, and you're present, you're on your level when you're doing that. So that might be an I love you ritual you're already doing and you didn't really realize it. But dealing with pain is a little bit, it can be like on the verge of, are they having a tantrum about it? Are they making it a little bit bigger than it should be? And kind of how to address that. But I love their discipline tips page. You really can go to consciousdiscipline.com and in the search bar, type discipline tips. There's a lot of really, really specific things about tantrums and siblings. There's a special needs section. There's a child development section. There's lots of good stuff on the website, though, that can help you kind of navigate those hard questions.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. I hope that you guys feel comfortable with the introductory conscious discipline, and that you guys join us for our next one, where we'll cover the other couple more powers of perception, or powers of conscious adults, and dive a little bit deeper into some discipline strategies and tips. Bye, everyone.